Prejudice and discrimination. These are two terms that often come up in many facets of our society, whether it be through the news, social media, people we surround ourselves with, to the very institutions we belong to. In fact, it is so ingrained in our current society that there is not a single human being out there who does not hold some kind of prejudice against others. Our presentation seeks to provide useful information surrounding prejudice and discrimination, as reflected in our textbook, Is Everyone Really Equal? In addition, we will be illustrating an arts-informed strategy educators can adapt when teaching these topics, no matter what grade they are teaching. It is our hope that with it, teachers and students alike will gain eye-opening insights into these topics and how it can instill a sense of awareness and inclusivity in classrooms.
Prejudice, simply put into one word, means prejudgment. Specifically, it's a learned prejudgment about people of social groups we don't belong to. It's based on our limited knowledge or experience with the group and the ignorance we have towards them. We do it by making simple judgments and assumptions while projecting them onto everyone in that group. It's part of how we learn to sort people into categories that make sense to us. Prejudicial attitudes are often related to sex, gender, ethnic, socioeconomic status, culture, age, disability, or other personal characteristics. Prejudice can be positive or negative, and both ideas are unfair to a group, because they're not earned by the person but granted or imposed based on ideas about the group that the person belongs to. For example, I like Canada because Canadians are polite and friendly. I don't like the States because Americans are rude and impolite. While the prejudice I have towards people with Canadian nationality appears to be positive, it's still unfair how it isn't earned. This abstract idea will interfere with my ability to make valid assessments, and it sets one group up against the other just because they have a different nationality. Prejudice begins as a stereotype. Stereotypes are overgeneralized beliefs about a particular group of people. An example of a gender stereotype is assuming that teachers and nurses are women and that doctors and engineers are men. Conceptions are the foundation for how we evaluate what is quote-unquote normal. Not only these evaluations distinguish between who seems normal and who isn't, they also affect how we view other important social values, such as character. When we add values to our stereotypes, it becomes prejudice. A lot of us think that we don't have any thoughts about prejudice against people because we see ourselves as free of prejudice and we like to portray ourselves in a positive light. However, the process is very complex, and the reality is that no one can avoid prejudice because it's embedded in our society. For example, awareness that could protect us can hold prejudicial thoughts. For example, if I'm lost and I want to ask a stranger for directions, I would likely approach someone who has a friendly appearance, and I wouldn't approach someone who looks dangerous because they might be affiliated with illegal activity and could potentially hurt me. In this example, I assumed about a person's characteristics based on their appearance and not actually based on the person's true identity. It also shows how prejudice is a built-in and inherited nature by humans that can distinctively help us in our survival. Prejudice challenges critical social justice literacy, and that is developing the critical thinking that would help us reveal our prejudices and reflect upon and challenge them. At the same time, society tells us that it is bad to have prejudices, and so we feel the pressure to deny them. To challenge our prejudice, we must challenge the social segregation that's built into the culture.
Discrimination takes place when we act on our prejudices. Prejudice towards others guides our thoughts, organizes our values, and influences our actions. If we leave our prejudgments unexamined, they will shape our behaviors. Students become more engaged in learning when they are exposed to an authentic experience in the classroom and to something they can relate to personally. Moreover, critical theory should come from personal awareness. With activities in the classroom, we as teachers wish to bring to light prejudgments they might experience or that they see in society. We wish to create awareness of how subtle beliefs and behaviors can affect social interactions in everyday life, and how these interactions might be discriminatory in nature. Discrimination could be subtle actions such as ignoring or disinterest, but they can also become violent. The purpose of bringing activities that challenge prejudices and discrimination is to help students identify their own prejudgments or assumptions and the impact of their actions on others, as well as their power to change them by embracing new information and new ways of thinking. By asking the students to write or express a stereotype, for example, it helps others to be aware of the actions they might have taken towards that person related to the stereotype or assumption. This will also help students realize how they might have the same prejudices against one person that they were not aware of to have. Positionality will also be required in bringing awareness in the classroom, since in order to understand their own assumptions and stereotypes, they need to understand them from a personal but also social perspective. They will need first to identify the social group they grew up in. This will also prove how society influences our thoughts and beliefs and influences how we interact with each other. Self-awareness and identity become part of the identification of biases. It would also show an authentic example from a first-hand point of view. Any activity in the classroom should incorporate a discussion portion. For example, about the patterns of socialization that came to be, or how the students are affected, as well as how to challenge these patterns and get involved in the change. According to Senso and D'Angelo, a key goal of critical social justice is to raise awareness of these pattern social codes. When we are conscious of them, we are more equipped to change them when they are based upon misinformation. Misinformation could be assumptions towards race, social groups, religion, or culture. The conversation can be enriched by talking about how these prejudices are part of the social construct, how these patterns were created in society, and how we can break the cycle. Discrimination awareness activities will bring to light students' own identity, which will inform others of their misconceptions towards others and the importance of openness and empathy. This topic might become uncomfortable at times, but necessary to gain new information and ways of thinking that will inform more fair actions. This will also broaden the spectrum culturally. Some might not be aware of the diversity in the classroom, for example, and thus these discussions will emphasize the interaction cross-culturally with members of a less familiar group, for example.
Arts-informed practices uses art to dismantle oppression while acknowledging positionality to understand our place in society. Arts-informed practices integrate creative arts as a tool to challenge and engage learners in critical reflection. This practice creates diverse ways of knowing and learning. In our activity, students will be reflecting on prejudice and discrimination through creative art. Through our task, students will reflect on society, prejudice, and discrimination, revealing the importance of self-reflecting and challenging biased assumptions within themselves. Arts-informed activities allow for a strong point of discussion to further conversations of prejudice and discrimination. Arts-informed practices allow us to further examine power dynamics and positionality through art. It is a collective and creative approach which encourages a cross-disciplinary understanding of the curriculum, as it is possible for arts-informed activities to recall traumatic events in students. It is greatly beneficial to lead an activity through a trauma-informed lens and have the ability to co-regulate students if we see that they are feeling anxious. When facilitating these activities, there are opportunities for modifications and accommodations in the classroom. Setting up the classroom can include soft spaces for work and desks organized in small groups or individually for more privacy. A successful activity benefits all learners' abilities and strengths. Additionally, English language learners can write down their responses in their primary language. Arts can provide amazing opportunities for students that need a chance to decompress or process emotions to have this intentional time. After the activity, there is an important opportunity for feedback regarding what was most challenging and most enjoyable about the task. It is important for teachers to provide opportunities for students to share input when completing arts-based activities. It is always important to remember this can be a painful and vulnerable experience for students to recall. It is crucial that as educators, we are able to be mindful of the experiences of our students and facilitate this activity through empathy and sensitivity.
Arts-informed practices allow for a multitude of ways students can express themselves, especially when it comes to a topic such as prejudice and discrimination, where students may feel vulnerable in expressing themselves in general. Our activity, referred to as paper plate portraits, will help students realize their own prejudices through stereotypes, the impact of their actions on others, as well as their power to spark change by embracing new info and ways of thinking. Students will first start off by drawing their face on the bump of the plate. They are encouraged to use a variety of materials and to make their portraits as unique as they are. Once their portrait is complete, students are to write words and phrases that someone might think about them just by looking at them. For younger students, this can be something as simple as, "People think I like pink because I am a girl," or for other students, they may mention stereotypes based on race, ethnicity, culture, class, etc. By asking students to write or express a stereotype or assumption they are subjected to, it will hopefully allow them to become aware of the preconceived notions they might have adopted towards other people. Once the portrait side of the plate is finished, students will proceed to color in a heart and write words or phrases that truly reflect who they are. If students wish, instead of writing, they may also draw images that reflect their personality or characteristics as well. Illustrating themselves on the inside of these plates helps affirm their identity and provokes a sense of belonging, especially since students are asked to share their portraits with the rest of the class. The teacher may then prompt students with discussion questions about the activity, such as, "Were you surprised by anything? Did you make any connections between your plate and a classmate's? And how did this activity help you understand the concepts of prejudice and discrimination?" Creating these paper plate portraits is a powerful, eye-opening, and hands-on activity that brings to light students' own identity, as well as the identity of their peers. For teachers, the activity aligns with the framework of the Alberta Teaching Quality Standard, as it promotes and sustains inclusive learning environments where diversity is embraced and every student is welcomed, cared for, respected, and safe. In addition, it is an instructional strategy that engages students in a meaningful learning activity based on an understanding of students' backgrounds, prior knowledge, and experiences. With this activity, we wish to bring to light the prejudgments that students might be subjected to. We wish to create awareness of how subtle beliefs and behaviors can affect social interactions in everyday life, and how these interactions might be discriminatory in nature. While the activity may cause some to step out of their comfort zone, it is necessary as it acknowledges diversity within the classroom and the hard truths of prejudice and discrimination itself. However, we understand that there are also limitations with our activity as well. While arts-based activities have their perks, some students may not be artistically gifted and/or feel self-conscious about their artistic skills. In regards to the topic, some teachers may not be informed of how to best support students when diving into personal and sensitive topics, especially ones that could evoke trauma responses in students who have had severe experiences with these topics. Finally, there are students who may not want to share their portraits as they do not feel comfortable opening up or sharing. This can especially be difficult if a class dynamic is not as strong or unified, and students may feel vulnerable to share personal thoughts and experiences.